Washington Journal continues.
Joining us now, the president of the National Education Association, Lily Eskelsen Garcia, joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for saying my name right. You got all the vowels, you got all the consonants. Good for you.
How long have you been president?
I've been president for since September 1.
Okay.
I'm still the new kid.
And for those who may not know you, give us a little bit of your background before you became president.
Well, actually, I started out as the lunch lady a million years ago at a Head Start program, became a teacher's aide, became a teacher. I was the Utah Teacher of the Year, and I've been working with activist teachers for years and years and years. We're now in a time where we have the chance to make history because we're talking about reauthorizing this little thing called No Child Left Untested, and we could change that to something that actually worked for kids.
What do you mean by that?
We have been in this nightmare of pretty words like no child left behind. Who could resist that? But you know, the prettier the words, sometimes the more you have to look at the details. And what it's come down to mean, whether the good, honest people that said, let's do something for kids, they said, well, we have to know how they're doing. And we all went, yes. And they went, so we'll give everybody a standardized test once a year. And we went, well, we kind of do that. And then we'll use it to make these huge decisions. This kid doesn't get to go to 4th grade. This kid doesn't get to graduate based on whether or not they hit a cut score on that one standardized test. So every educator, just kind of took a deep breath and went, are you kidding me? Really? One indicator, even if it's a good indicator, you can't make those huge decisions. This school has failed. This teacher is incompetent. You can't do that with one test. But
ultimately, a student's progress has to be measured somehow. What's the best way?
Exactly. Like I said, Teacher of the Year, I'm so good. I'm better than I think I am, and I think I'm fabulous. But I had lots of different ways to assess whether the kids got it. Teachers really do know how their kids are doing in the classroom. What we need to do is, of course, to demonstrate to the world, even the parents. I could sit down with you as a dad and moms and say, here's the portfolio of your kids' work. You can see their progress. So parents usually had a good idea about how their kids were doing. Teachers knew how their kids were doing. But how do we demonstrate to the world, the taxpayers, who really deserve to know, are we doing a good job with our kids? And one of the things that indicator showed us, if there was one good thing that came out of No Child Left, it was the disaggregation of test scores. Poor kids, kids who face discrimination because they're children of color, students with disabilities, English language learners. So now we have disaggregated data. And even on that one test, standardized test, when you see that affluent kids do considerably better on those tests than poor children, than children of color, then you have to say, there's a disconnect here. There is a gap. Where they failed in No Child Left, failed miserably, is they said, so who do we blame? So who gets fired? And we went, wait a minute, maybe it's because those kids are hungry. Maybe it's because those kids are missing a lot of school for one reason or another. So they jumped right to, and then we'll conclude that it's all because you are a failed school, instead of really doing some deep analysis on why are we seeing those gaps.
When my son was going to school, he was always uptight about taking tests. And then a lot of the teachers now, I just seen a little while back on the news that they were busted for cheating on their test scores so that they wouldn't get fired or so that they would get bonuses. So why don't you just do like we did when we were kids? Just have your test once a year and that was it.
And give them back their food. Well, and again, I've used the word corrupting many times, that when you have some high stakes consequence for this one number that you have to hit, frightened people, greedy people, dishonest people, whatever your motivation, it's a corrupting influence when you're using things like student achievement data It ought to be used to benefit students. And so people, we are hearing from, I wish we had heard from some students, because I go out and I talk to a lot of kids. And some of them are saying, you know, they cut our sports program. They cut our arts program. We don't have a band anymore. For some elementary schools, I was told by one teacher, we're not allowed to have recess until kids hit their cut scores. For some of these teachers that have talked to me, they've said, the testing isn't being used to really improve things for kids. It's a numbers game. And I think a lot of people, when they think it's a numbers game and it doesn't really matter, then that's a corrupting influence in and of itself too, because you're going, oh, well, you know, it doesn't matter to kids. We want everything to matter in that school, to doing something better for students. And we're seeing this distraction that has become corrupting. We have a chance to fix it. We have a chance with reauthorization. This Congress, this President, this Department of Education could actually talk about better indicators. They could talk about equity indicators. They could talk about how we make sure teachers are the most highly qualified people having authority to really do what their kids need them to do on that building level. Very few people are talking about what to do to make it right. But we know that people want to do the right thing.
Senator Alexander now heads up the Senate Committee on Education. He's been meeting with Democrats as well as reauthorization. Do you think it's going to happen? Have you had a chance to talk with him about it?
Well, let me tell you what we're up against. No Child Left Untested had that 12-year horizon to achieve a statistical impossibility. In federal law right now, it says that in the magical year 2014, which, if I just noticed, passed us by, 100% of human children will hit an ambitious cut score on a math and reading test. And if one kid misses that cut score by 1 point, by federal law, your entire school is labeled failure, and all of these punishments kick in. People get fired, principals get fired, schools close down. All of that is in federal law. And that's why they've been passing out these waivers like crazy, because everybody, Republicans, Democrats, anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together knows that, oh my gosh, so all of your special ed kids don't read on grade level, and so your entire school is labeled failure. Everybody's being given waivers. That can't go on forever. And those waivers, by the way, can have strings attached that the Department of Education say they become the lawmaker through these waivers. So something has to change, or you've given incredible authority to the Department of Ed to say, and if you want a waiver, here's what we want you to do.
So what does that mean towards reauthorization then, the potential of it?
I think what that means is you have a whole lot of governors, Democrats and Republicans. You have a whole lot of senators and congressmen on both sides of the aisle that are saying, I'm not real comfortable with the Department of Ed being able to declare whether or not 100% of our schools will be labeled failure. Washington State didn't get one of those waivers because they didn't want to play that game. And all of their schools are online. 100% of them, the best of the best, will be labeled failure, unfairly and absurdly.
Poplar Grove